Okay, Christopher Peaks back here today with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast. And we have State Auditor here with us, Andrew Sorrel. He is running for Secretary of State in the 2026 election. Andrew, how are you, sir?
I'm well, Chris. I tell you what, that 4 years went by fast. I remember doing this with you 4 years ago when I was running for state auditor, and here we are again.
Yeah, and thank you so much. You was the first statewide candidate to speak with me. So
Oh,
I
cool.
really appreciate that. Yeah, I've always remembered that. Thanks to Micah Messer for arranging that. So tell me, we've seen that is Secretary Allen just took a bunch of illegals voters off the list, and I think a couple of years ago, Alabama's election laws were ranked the safest in the country. Is there a way to ensure that they remain that way?
Yeah, so first of all, we are ranked number 2 in the country right now on the Heritage Scorecard for election integrity, election security. We were ranked number 1. You're correct about that a couple of years ago. Tennessee has since passed us, and I believe Florida's either tied with us or a close third. So we're still very close to the top of the scorecards. We're still doing really well. We score in the mid 80s on the election integrity scorecard. That being said, there's 2 big categories where Tennessee is beating us and where we could improve. And those 2 categories are number 1, cleanliness of the voter rolls. Now, that goes back to something you also just mentioned about getting the illegals off our voter rolls. And indeed, Wes Allen did identify 3,251 likely illegals. They were people who had registered to vote and they had like this immigrant ID number. Now, some of them may since have become citizens, but you're not supposed to be registered with that ID number because at that time they wouldn't have been a citizen anyway. So when he went to remove those from the voter rolls, there was a federal was an injunction put on him by a federal judge because you're not allowed to do voter file maintenance within 90 days of a federal election, and we were 86 days out. However, since the conclusion of that federal election, I believe those are in the process of being removed now. So we have lots more work we can do on cleaning up our voter rolls, and we can get into that a little bit later in the interview. The second big category that Tennessee is beating us on is election audits. And it's easy to understand because they audit their elections and we don't. In fact, we're the last state in the nation that doesn't audit our elections. So we get a big fat goose egg in the category of election audits. And if we were to improve our score in those 2 categories, I think we could regain our number 1 standing. Now, when we talk through Alabama election problems, there's quite a few of them. There's quite a few ideas I have how we can improve our elections. And my thinking is, yeah, we have pretty good elections, but man, I mean, we got some big gaping holes in our election process here. How are we ranked number 2? I mean, how bad must the other 48 states, 47 states behind us be if we're ranked number 2?
So for people that may not understand, can you explain what an audit is?
Yeah, so there's all different types. So what I believe in is a post-election audit where you hand count the ballots. What you're going to do is you're going to look for fake or copied ballots, and you're going to look and make sure that the tabulator added up the number of votes correctly. We've done this one time in Alabama. It was in 2022. My friend Representative David Stanridge, who is a representative from Blount County, Alabama, he carried a post-election audit bill that audited 3 counties. Now, these 3 counties had to volunteer for it, which are right there is already your first problem because the counties that are cheating are probably not the ones raising their hand to volunteer for the audit, right? But nonetheless, these 3 counties volunteered. It was Marshall County, Houston County, and Dallas County. They audited 1 countywide race and they audited 1 statewide race in each of those 3 counties. They hand counted the ballots and they were trying to ascertain whether or not the hand count would match the tabulator result. In Houston County and Marshall County, it did match the result. In Dallas County, it did not. The machine had somehow misread a vote for Kay Ivey as a vote for Yolanda Flowers. So Kay Ivey only got 471 votes out of 473 votes that she deserved in that particular county. Now, 2 votes may not seem like a lot to be off, but you got to remember, first of all, we're only talking about 1 race in 1 county here. There's 67 other counties. Many of the counties are larger than Dallas County. Dallas is a relatively small county in terms of population. And number 2, there's close by counties like Conecuh County, where the sheriff's race was decided by 1 vote. We saw the Tom Whatley Jay Hovey State Senate race come down to 1 vote in the 2022 Republican primary. The individual carrying the election integrity bill, House Bill 30 right now, her name is Debbie Wood, State Representative Debbie Wood. She won her runoff or her primary by 6 or 7 votes back in 2018. So many, many elections come down to just a handful of votes. So what I want to do is at the conclusion of election, before the certification, we need to hand count our ballots. We need to make sure it matches the tabulated result. Other states are hand counting 5% of their ballots. House Bill 30 is proposing, I'm supporting House Bill 30. It's better than what we have now, which is nothing on election audits. I would actually be in favor of something even stronger where we hand count more ballots. It only requires 30 ballots per county to be hand counted. I think that's way low. But that's the basic idea. And you do it before the certification. What do you do if you conduct an audit after the winners have been certified and then you find out that somebody didn't actually win the election? That would be pretty embarrassing, right? Why not fix that on the front end? That's been my position. So I don't love everything about House Bill 30, but I appreciate that Debbie Wood is really the only legislator out there right now fighting hard for election integrity. And I compliment her on her efforts.
Mr. Sorrel, why do you think there's so much opposition in the legislature to, election post audits?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I don't understand it because I don't know that there's opposition in the Alabama House of Representatives because the last 2 years they've passed the election audit bill. So I don't blame the Alabama House of
It
Representatives.
seems to mostly be up in the Senate.
Yeah, that's right. The bill stalled there last year. Now, at the time of this recording, it's Saturday, May 10th. The Senate could still pass House Bill 30 on their last day of session, their 30th day of session this coming Wednesday. So if that happens, I'll take back everything I'm saying right now. But as of now, it looks like the bill's not moving, and it's very frustrating because when you run polling on post-election audits in Alabama, you know, high 80s, I think 87, 88% of Republican primary voters are in favor of a post-election audit. If you ask Republican primary voters, do you believe the 2020 election was stolen? Over 90% of them right now say yes. People do not believe that we have adequate election integrity measures in place right now. And it's always frustrated me, Brandon. You know this. You've been covering my career since I went in the state legislature. There's sometimes a disconnect between public perception and what the public wants and then public policy and what actually gets translated into law. And we saw this with my constitutional carry fight. You had 70+% of individuals in Alabama believing that you shouldn't have to purchase a pistol permit to exercise your constitutional right to bear firearms. And yet the legislature was completely unable to pass that legislation until myself and Representative Stringer worked very hard on it for 4 years and finally got it done.
Well, the biggest thing other than elections that Secretary of State does is business filings. Are you confident that we're handling that right and that we're getting those filings done in as rapid as we possibly can? I know that was something John Merrill worked on extensively when he was Secretary of State.
That's a good question, and I am confident of that. I mean, if you, and because I use the Secretary of State's website for business filings all the time, I have currently five Alabama entities that I'm either the owner of or a member of an LLC or something in Alabama. So I file with the Secretary of State routinely. I open and close entities. I update registered agents. I file reports with them, all of that stuff. And I can tell you that I always get them back same day. And that was not the case 15 years ago when I was doing business filings. Before John Merrill got in there, you'd be looking at 60 days, 90 days, sometimes worse wait to get your business filings back. It's something I really compliment former Secretary of State John Merrill on is getting those business filings caught up. And then Wes Allen has kept them caught up. They've been caught up ever since about 2015 when John Merrill took on this project. That's great. Now, what I'm not happy with as far as business services is the fees being charged. You can go to the Secretary of State's website and you can look at the fees, and there are 9 pages of business service fees charged by the Secretary of State. And I believe that some of these fees are exorbitant, to be frank. If you want to close down your entity, it's a $100 fee. Well, nobody closes their entity because their business is successful and they're making a ton of money. You only shut your entity down if the business is not doing well or you're no longer using it. We charge you a $100 fee to shut it down. I think that should be free or most $10. We have other fees, updating your business's registered agent. I mentioned that one a minute ago. I had to do this a year ago. It's how I know this fee exists. It's a simple name and address change. That's all it is. $100 fee to do that. My position on fees has always been that the fee should reflect the actual cost of the administration of doing the task. If the fee costs less than the administration cost, then you're subsidizing it. If the fee costs more than the administrative cost to perform the function, it's no longer a fee, it's a tax. And we want to make sure that we are not taxing Alabamians. So one of the things I'm going to do is go through those 9 pages of business service fees with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm going to look at which ones we can cut. And the 2 I mentioned are definitely on the chopping block. I want to make it as cheap as possible to do business in Alabama. We need to be encouraging that. Another fee the Secretary of State's office charges, which is not related to business services, but it is a service fee, is the fee to purchase the voter rolls. Do either of y'all know how much it costs to purchase Alabama's 3.8 million voters? If you wanted to buy that list from the Secretary of State's office, do you know what that would cost you?
About
$1,000.
$35,000.
I'm sorry, you said a couple thousand. Is that what you said?
I said
35,000,
30.
I guess.
35,000. Yes, you're exactly right. $38,000 is the correct answer. 38,000 is what it would cost. So let's say that Chris Peaks wants to purchase the voter list and he wants to double check the Secretary of State's office and make sure that we're doing a good job of keeping the voter rolls clean. Unless he has $38,000 to purchase the list the first time, and then let's say that he identifies a bunch of people it needs to come off, he interacts with our office and says, hey, why are these people registered? There's 87 people registered at the same address or whatever. Then he wants to go back and double check that these people got removed a year later. He's got to purchase the list again. It's another $38,000. We're the most expensive in the nation by far. Most states are less than $5,000. Some of them are a few $100s, and there's even a couple states that are completely free. Liberal states are not even charging what we are to purchase the voter rolls. And this is set by administrative code. It's not set by the legislature. So this is a fee that I believe as Secretary of State, I could, on my own, without legislative approval, I could reduce that fee. My plan is to reduce it 90%. I'm considering even reducing it 99%, but we're going to get that cost way down to where an election integrity activist, or honestly, just an average voter, can purchase the voter list. Because we're not really being transparent. If the fees are so high, you can't afford to do it. This is public information. And every 2 years, 2 weeks before the primary, the probate judges have to publish in a newspaper general circulation in the county the voter list. They publish all the names. So this is public information. But if you wanted to put together a statewide voting list, you only got 2 options. Option 1 is to go to all 67 counties 2 weeks before the primary and purchase a newspaper, and the names would be in these newspapers. That's a terrible way to do it. If you want an electronic format, the only other way to do it is to pay $38,000 to get it. So that fee is definitely on the chopping block too if I'm the next Secretary of State.
Let me ask this, Andrew. Is that not putting people's safety at risk if everybody can get a hold of the voters list and say, hey, I'm going to make sure this guy, I'm going to hammer this guy, this guy, this guy?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is there's some people that can have their information redacted. So some public officials, first responders, there's a few Alabama laws out there where some certain classes of people have their information redacted. But I would say no, I don't think it is a risk, because this is not like a gun database of permit holders or something that we're putting out there, like something that would be dangerous like that. This is the registered voter list. And I think citizens have a right to know who's on the voter rolls, and that those people are real, that they exist, that they've not passed away, that they haven't moved away, that they're not in prison. I think that should all be public information. And remember, we publish this list in the newspaper general circulation anyway. That's already current law. So, I mean, anybody can go pick up a newspaper and see who's on the voter rolls. The other 49 states all do this, and they all do it cheaper than us. And I don't think anyone's having problems with people abusing the voter list. There are tens of thousands of commercially available lists of people and their addresses out there. In fact, you can find almost anybody's phone number if you want out there on the internet right now. So no, to be honest, I'm not really worried about this.
Mr. Sorrel, currently you're in the state auditor's office. Could you explain to the listeners what exactly our state auditors does?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. There's 3 main duties of the state auditor, and the first of which is auditing the state's property. There's $1.3 billion worth of taxpayer-owned property. It's 180 different state boards and agencies that we audit. There are approximately 300,000 inventory items that are worth $500 or more. What we're auditing is non-consumable personal property. So you'd be your desk, your laptops, your pickup trucks, your firearms, your ALDOT equipment, Everything you can think of that the state of Alabama would purchase that costs more than $500 goes on the goes on the property rolls, excuse me. That's the first thing that we're doing. The second thing is I serve on the Board of Adjustment with the Secretary of State, the Treasurer, and the Finance Director. So the Alabama Constitution says the state of Alabama cannot be made a party to any lawsuit. So you can't sue the state of Alabama, but they did create a mechanism where you can recoup money from the state. If you have a valid claim against the state, you bring it to the Board of Adjustment, and you can file a claim with us and get paid if we deem your claim to be valid. So examples of claims that we get: up until this year, teachers did not have workers' compensation in Alabama. So all the workers' comps claim for teachers basically came through the Board of Adjustment. If they got injured on the job, we would, verify their medical expenses and whatnot and reimburse them for that. By the way, I am thankful that they now are going to have workers' comp going forward. We were the last state in the nation to give teachers workers' comp in Alabama too. I think that was something that should have been done probably long ago. We have instances where there was one where a Department of Transportation was spraying the weeds along the highway, and it was a windy day, and the weed killer they sprayed killed the guy's orchard, killed all of his trees. He put a claim in, and we got him reimbursed for his trees being damaged or ruined. So that's some examples of what the Board of Adjustment does. We get sometimes $30 million in claims every quarter. We award somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 million of those $30 million of claims. That's all open to the public. Anybody can come attend those meetings. They're up on the third floor of the Capitol. Do 5 meeting days and 1 voting session every quarter. The last big duty, there's some other minor duties, which I'll skip. There's other little boards and penny trust fund board and stuff that I serve on. But the third major duty is appointing Board of Registrars members. There's 201 Board of Registrars members in Alabama, and 66 of them are auditor appointments. I get 1 appointment in every county except for Jefferson County. Counties with a population above 500,000 as of 1977, when the law was passed, their county commission hires their registrar. They're not appointed. Well, there's only 1 county that qualified in 1977. That was Jefferson County. All the other counties have 3 Board of Registrars members, with the exception of 1 Barber County, which has 4. They had a special local legislation to give them 4. They have 2 courthouses, and they have 2 registrars at each location. Board of Registrars are the only people in the state who can register you to vote or who can deregister you from voting. If you move away, pass away, or get put away, like John Merrill used to say, you have to come off the voter rolls. It's a little more nuanced than that. Not every crime, not everything you go to jail for. Lots of people in jail do vote and can legally vote, but crimes of moral turpitude, you got to come off the voter rolls. So I've got those 66 appointments. I think I put good people in those positions who were serious about election integrity. And we got the registrars a pay raise this year, which was really important. They weren't getting paid enough money. It's very hard to find good people, good with computers, high school graduates who will do the job for $85 a day with no benefits, no retirement, no insurance, $85 a day, part-time work. Hard to find people to do that. We got them a pay raise. They're going to be at $115 a day now, which is still not enough, but it's a whole lot better. And through my appointment of registrars, I got really interested in the election integrity process. I've always had some interest in it, but I had direct involvement with it. I go speak at the Board of Registrars conferences. I interact with registrars on a weekly basis. And that's why when I heard that the Secretary of State position was going to be opening up back in August, Wes Allen came to me and said, I'm planning to run for lieutenant governor. So I planned about 9 months ago to run for this position. So that's kind of where it all started for me.
So let me ask you this about voting machines. I don't know how much you know or studied them yet, but Dean Odle has claimed that there's internet that goes from his voting precinct, and when he casts his vote, it goes to the Secretary of State's office. John Merrill has said they're not online. Yeah, I've been attacked because I'm not taking a position on this because I don't know. I can barely turn a cell phone on. Do you know if the voting machines are hooked up by internet to the Secretary of State's office?
Okay, so when you say voting machines, we need to make a couple important distinctions. So first of all, Alabama does not have electronic voting machines. So we don't cast our vote in an electronic manner. We cast it on a paper ballot. What we have is electronic tabulators that count our votes. Those tabulator results, those tabulators are not connected to the internet. Alabama law says they cannot be connected to the internet. Now, has anyone ever looked inside a tabulator to verify they're not connected to the internet? No, the ES&S contract with Alabama doesn't allow us to open a tabulator and check. And I think that's a problem, honestly. I think we do, if we're going to tell people the machines aren't connected to the internet, we need to verify that. And I think that's something that the electronic voting committee can look at and we can work on. So I don't believe they're connected, but nobody can prove it one way or another right now because no one's actually ever audited the machine itself. But I will say that let's assume that they're not connected to the internet for purposes of this argument. Then you tabulate the results at the precinct, you drive them back to the courthouse, and you take the flash drive from the ES&S machine, the DS200, you insert it into a laptop at the probate judge's office, and it compiles the results. And then you upload that to the Secretary of State's website. Now, this is where I think we can have a little bit of improvement in our process. There's one laptop per county where these laptops are not supposed to have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth capability. They're only supposed to be able to access the internet through a direct link, a plug-in internet cord. You connect and then you upload the results to the Secretary of State's website. Well, anytime you're connecting anything to do with voting to the internet, red flags need to go off. Now, do I think that Chinese hackers are getting in there and manipulating the results between the county probate judge's office and Secretary of State's website? Who knows? I mean, probably not, but who really knows? So what we need to do is, in addition to having those results uploaded to the Secretary of State's website, we need to have a probate judge or his designee in each county physically call the Secretary of State's office and then verify the uploaded results by telephone to make sure that the numbers that were supposed to be transmitted are the numbers actually received by the Secretary of State's website. I think that would be a big step we could take to improve election integrity in Alabama. On top of, as I mentioned previously, we really need to have a look in those machines at some point and just verify that they do not have any kind of internet connectivity.
So, as Secretary of State, would you be opposed to the legislature going to some sort of electronic voting where people can vote from their phones or from their home computers?
I would. I don't trust electronic voting at all. There's no paper trail. There's no way to audit electronic voting. And I'm completely opposed to electronic voting. I think I support Alabama has a good election process right now. We vote in person on election day with a photo ID on a paper ballot. All four of those things I support. I don't want to change any of the core four processes that we currently have in place to ensure election integrity in Alabama. And there are bills introduced all the time to lengthen the amount of time to vote or to get rid of the photo ID requirement. Or, there's people out there that want the ballot drop boxes and the mass mail out of ballots. I'm opposed to all of those things. As Secretary of State, I would oppose all of that legislation. We need to keep the process we have now, and we need to do little tweaks to it, like what Chris and I were just talking about, things we can do to improve our process and to just illustrate to the public that we're serious about election integrity. We want to make sure we can trust our machines, and we need to be able to verify that to the public.
People that are wanting to get rid of photo IDs, is this to influence or tamper with our election process? Because that just defies logic to me that you would want to do away with it. And if someone doesn't have a photo ID, can't they do like a provisional ballot on that day?
Okay, so they could, but then they would still have to produce a photo ID before the provisional ballot would actually count. So, I mean, you still have to have a photo ID to vote at some point anyway. The only exception to that would be if you're 65 or older and you're voting by absentee, you're not required by law to produce a copy of your photo ID. But look, the Democrats want to make an argument that it's somehow discrimination that we require a photo ID and poor people can't afford a photo ID and blah, blah, blah. That's all complete nonsense because you can get a free photo voter ID, which is only valid for voting, shouldn't be used to buy a firearm or for any other identification purposes. It's only for voting. You can go to any board of registrars. You can go to the Secretary of State's office. Shoot, the Secretary of State's office will literally drive to your house and make you one. If you don't have transportation, they will. John Merrill used to do this. He would send people or he would go himself. They would make a photo ID for a voter. So nobody has the excuse that I can't afford a photo ID. It's free and we'll even bring it to you. So I think it's a silly argument. I think not. And by the way, there's unintentional problems that happen if you don't have a photo ID. I remember going and voting back before the electronic poll books. This was probably 18, 20 years ago. I was a young guy. I was voting. My brother and I both voted at Grace Life Precinct in Muscle Shoals. And I went in to vote and they said, well, you've already voted this morning. And I said, no, I haven't. I said, I just got here. And we figured out that my brother had voted and they had highlighted my name instead of my brother's. Like, mistakes happen. But if you present a photo ID, you notice when you go in to vote now, they scan your driver's license and it pulls you up in the system. So that way, if you have a Justin Andrew Sorrel Jr. and a Justin Andrew Sorrel Sr., for instance, you're getting the right one. The electronic poll book's not going to mess that up. Whereas human error highlighting who's voted and stuff, that's just a recipe for disaster. So we're in the 21st century now. We need to do things the right way. This photo ID prevents intentional cheating and unintentional accidents.
On another topic, when you were in the legislature passed medical cannabis for certain people with, a doctor's recommendation. And we were told then that we would never have recreational marijuana. And fast forward to 4 years later, and I can go to any convenience store in the state or grocer now and buy gummies or candies or confectionery items or beverages that are, packed with THC that's either synthetic or has been distilled out of non-psychoactive hemp. But, it's got the same potency as if we grew it in the marijuana field. Was that ever, did the legislature ever consider that, or was that just something that just grew up organically through the federal law?
Yeah, so as you know, I voted against the medical marijuana bill back in, I think it was 2021. It was Representative Ball and Senator Melson, both of whom are friends of mine. And I went to them both and I explained why I couldn't vote for the bill. And there was the slippery slope argument that this is just a step towards recreational marijuana in Alabama. And of course, everybody back then denied it, but we all knew it was. And now we're kind of seeing that play out. And that's obviously a big problem, but there were more problems than that with the bill. I mean, it was really anti-free market. It was, all right, we're going to have this board. They're going to decide who gets the licenses, who can dispense it, who can grow it. All of those things, if you were going to do it, which I wasn't for, but if you were going to do it, then you want to do it in a free market fashion. This is similar to the certificate of needs board, where the medical providers have got to go before it and prove that there's a need in a community before they can build a hospital or a rural surgery center or have an operating air ambulance. And as much as I love Ronald Reagan, this was all Ronald Reagan's idea back in the 1980s. We need to have the certificate of needs boards in all the states, and 49 states adopted them, then figured out it was a terrible idea. The federal requirement to have one got dropped, and now we're down. Still 36 states have one, including Alabama. Then you have the case where Richard Scrushy, the CEO of HealthSouth, is bribing Don Siegelman with a $500,000 contribution to his lottery campaign to get on the certificate of needs board. So theoretically, he can vote no in his competition opening a rural surgery center. I saw all these things happen as a young adult in Alabama. And that's why I was opposed to the way that the medical marijuana bill was structured too. I don't like these government boards determining, okay, we can only have 10 people in the state who sell it. And here's who can grow it. And it's going to go, the licenses are going to go to the politically well-connected. And I don't like that. That's not how it should be. By the way, same problem with the gambling legislation. I've been opposed to gambling in Alabama. As you know, I voted against it in the legislature, was outspoken against the bill last year. But same thing, we're going to say how many casinos there can be, where they are, who can get the licenses. There's going to be this bidding process and all this. And none of it is free market. And I don't like government involvement in the free market. The government right now in Alabama, we sell alcohol. We lose money at the ABC stores. Now, it's tricky because you look at the revenue coming from ABC and it's positive, and they're saying we're generating revenue for the state. But if you subtract out, if you take out the taxes that would be collected on that anyway, they're actually losing money. Senator Arthur Orr has made this point many times. Like, how dumb are we? Only the state of Alabama could sell alcohol and lose money on it, right? But we still find a way. The idea is if a private company was selling the alcohol, that they would be generating the same tax revenue as the ABC store. So you really have to back the tax revenue off of it. And then you see that ABC is losing money. So this is it's convoluted. I don't mean to get off on all the other things other than what you actually asked me about. I'm just trying to illustrate that government getting involved in alcohol, in gambling, in marijuana, it's always a bad idea. It was going to be a disaster from the start. We've seen the Medical Marijuana Commission in Alabama have all kinds of trouble. They've been embroiled in lawsuits ever since the bill passed. And yes, we're headed towards recreational medical marijuana, which I don't think a lot of the people who voted for this bill, I don't think that's what they actually wanted.
Staying on that same line there, we've seen that the legislature just gave this gummy stuff, or what, the synthetic marijuana, controlled to the ABC board. Was that a right decision?
Well, it's a wrong decision because we shouldn't have an ABC board. I mean, we should completely eliminate the ABC board. And the problem is a lot of the ABC, they don't own the stores, they rent. And a lot of the donors of the politicians own the ABC stores and whatnot. And that's why you always get the pushback when you go to get Alabama out of the alcohol business. There's always pushback to it. And sometimes you just got to follow the money, and that'll lead you to the right place. So yeah, I think that is a mistake because I don't think we should have ABC stores at all.
Um, right now, there's nobody else in the Secretary of State's race that I'm aware of. Do you think that's going to change? Are you hearing any rumblings of anyone else, money being gathered to try to get an opponent for you, or you just running until something happens?
Oh, I mean, there's always rumblings. I've been hearing rumblings ever since August when I decided I was going to run for this position. But I don't let the noise distract me. I'm out there, I'm running my race. I've visited 42 counties so far, done a campaign event in 42 counties. On May 19th, we can begin raising money. That's just 9 days from now. I'm going to come out strong on my fundraising. I'm going to come out swinging. I mean, y'all might have seen I put a $250,000 loan into my campaign back about 6 weeks ago. So, I'm just going to position myself the best I can to win this race, and I'm going to ignore the noise and the competition and just let the chips fall where they may. The way that I've run the last 2 times when I ran for state representative, everyone knew I was running 3 years out. Yes, there were some people that went out and recruited me an opponent in the primary. Didn't matter. I got 77%. When I ran for auditor, I had 4 opponents initially, and in a 5-way race, I was polling in last place. But it's not about where you start in the polls; it's about where you finish. Now I've got a little bit of name ID built up. My fundraising base is built up. I've had a big head start. I've got my campaign platform ironed out. I've been giving speeches all over Alabama. I'm very conversant on the Secretary of State issues, whereas 9 months ago I was a little rusty and needed some work. So I feel good. Anyone running against me, I mean, they're gonna have a tough fight. Certainly, anybody can be beaten. I've always believed that there's somebody out there that can beat you, and you got to stay humble and you got to work hard. But there's nobody I know of that's imminently set to announce for Secretary of State. So for the time being, I'm enjoying being the only one in the race. I'm going to pray that that lasts as long as it possibly can. And I'm going to position myself to be as hard to beat as possible.
Do you think that a lot of people are confused about what the auditor does? I'm glad you explained it a while ago. But do you think there should be like a Doge type team in Alabama to look for waste, fraud, and abuse?
Well, the answer is clearly yes. I mean, let's talk about our budgets for a moment. When I was in the legislature, we had a $2.1 billion general fund budget. We had, $7 billion education budget. Well, those numbers are 3.7 and 9.9 now. I mean, the cost of everything in Alabama is just going through the roof. Government is spending a lot of money in Alabama. If you're spending $9.9 billion, there's probably some waste, fraud, and abuse in there, and we should be catching it and rooting it out. Now, Alabama's not like the federal government. I mean, we have to balance our budget. For instance, we can't print money, we can't borrow money endlessly. We can't inflate our way out of a problem like the federal government tries to do. So we're in much better shape than the federal government. I think overall we are fairly conservative on the way that we budget. We have rainy day funds. We haven't been in proration since the Republicans took over 15 years ago. The last 15 budgets. I mean, the way that we budget now is more responsible. But that being said, are we growing government too fast? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. And what can we cut? And I was pleased to see Governor Ivey signed into law the grocery tax cut. The second cent of the 4-cent grocery tax cut is going to take effect on September 1st this year. That's what as a legislator, I was always looking for. What can we cut? Where can we save money? A bill I used to carry in the legislature, y'all may remember this, was a bill that would move public notices from newspaper publication to the Secretary of State's website. And John Merrill and I had a deal worked out where he was going to publish those for free on the Secretary of State's website, and you could see all 67 counties' public notices in one place. Unfortunately, I had that bill in committee all 4 years, and it failed all 4 years. As Secretary of State, I'm bringing that plan back because we are wasting millions of dollars publishing notices in newspapers that nobody reads. If you want to easily access information now, where do you go? You go to the internet. You don't go buy a newspaper from a newspaper stand and look for legal notices there. It's a very inefficient way of doing it. So I'm going to bring that idea back. So that's just one quick example of where we could save taxpayers millions of dollars a year. And I know that Shad White, my counterpart over in Mississippi, he's got a Mississippi Doge that he started. his office's duties are different than mine. I've only got a staff of 9. He has a staff of 150 over there. He can do a whole lot more performance audits, looking for ways to save money and stuff than I can do. We really only audit the property here in Alabama. But the answer to your question is absolutely yes. Every state in America should be forming a state level DOJ to look for waste, fraud, and abuse, how we can save money. And when we find money to save, we need to be returning it back to the taxpayers. We don't just need to take it and spend it on something else. Let's give it back to the taxpayers. Taxes are too high. Government is too big.
One thing that, I always have found interesting with the Alabama legislature is we're always, when we run for office, we're always talking about, Main Street and small government and, free markets. But then when we get to Montgomery, it's always seems to me, maybe from as a journalist, like it's public-private partnerships. We're growing jobs. We're going to increase the workforce. And, it's where's this disconnect, it seems, between when we're running for office in the district till we go to Montgomery and all of a sudden we want to become a command economy?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I think the way that the government's role in economic development is to have low taxes and easy regulations. You don't want to over-regulate. That's the best thing you can do for your business climate. So if we want to attract more people, more jobs here to Alabama, then how about we look at eliminating our state income tax? I mean, all the states around, and Mississippi just did it. Florida doesn't have a state income tax. All the states around us are eliminating or have already eliminated their state income tax, and we haven't. That makes us less competitive. It makes people less likely to want to move here. Why would you live where I do in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, if you could go 20 miles north in Tennessee and not have a state income tax? I've heard a lot of people say that before. That's, it's not very smart on our part. So we've got to be looking for ways to save people money on taxes and just make business easier, roll back some of these regulations. I think government has gotten to where they say, well, okay, let's raise taxes. Let's start bringing in more revenue, and we'll use that money to promote bringing business here. So wait a minute, we're going to raise taxes and then go advertise with it as a government and try to bring business and industry into our state. Why don't we just cut taxes, keep taxes low, make sure we're making it easy on businesses, things like what I'm talking about, like slashing business service fees on the Secretary of State's website. And trust me, word will spread. And I think we're missing some easy money with certain industries. So that's another problem I have when government starts picking winners and losers. We want this type industry. We don't want this type industry. I'll tell you an industry that could be booming right now in Alabama, and that's cryptocurrency. But we've failed to pass a single cryptocurrency piece of legislation in Alabama. And I was the first one to try it in 2021. I had Alabama's first ever Bitcoin bill on the floor. Well, I got a friend in Florence named Will. He operates a Bitcoin mining operation. He brought business and industry to the Shoals because TVA has some of the lowest power rates in the country. It's a very attractive environment for somebody to bring business and industry in. If we were more crypto friendly, we could bring business into the state. And guess what? It wouldn't cost us a penny. All we have to do is pass a bill that says, hey, we're not going to tax your crypto on an ad valorem basis. Hey, you're not going to have to put up with any stricter noise regulations than any other type industry does in the same area of town. Like just common sense things like that don't cost us anything to do, but send a signal that we are friendly towards that type of industry. But people lose sight of what their role is as a legislator. Your role is not to be a job creator. If you want to be a job creator, go be an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I have created 20 Alabama jobs, but politicians always like to brag about how many jobs they create. Politicians don't create jobs. Entrepreneurs create jobs, and politicians try to take credit for that. And I think that's wrong. That's not their job. The job of a legislator, the job of any elected official is to protect individual liberty and freedom. That is our constitutional role. Defend the Constitution of Alabama, defend the Constitution of the United States, protect individual liberty and freedom. And any bill that infringes on people's liberties, any bill that raises taxes, and any bill that grows government is contrary to those values, the values that people, as you say, campaign on when they're in their districts. They get to Montgomery and they lose sight of those things, and they think that their role is to be an economic developer.
Speaking about the tax cuts or cutting the state income tax, I remember when Ronald Reagan cut federal taxes, it increased the federal treasury like 109%. Now, I've not seen any numbers on this, but if we got rid of our state income tax, would that not also create more revenue because people have more money to spend and therefore there's going to be more local sales taxes taken in?
Well, it very well could because I mean, yeah, you're going to bring more people in. People are going to have more money to spend, and that's going to increase the sales taxes, as you mentioned. There is a point where if your taxes are too high and you cut them, you actually boost economic revenue, and the government actually brings in more money, and that's indisputable. We saw that with the Trump tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts. I mean, tax cuts work. They work every time they're tried. Now, you can't cut them all to zero. The government does have to have some money to operate with. But I don't know what the sweet spot is, but I know that our taxes are too high. And I think that, certainly our I think sales taxes are exceptionally high in Alabama. You go to other states, you're not paying 10% sales tax like we have in some Alabama municipalities. You're not paying 5% income tax in a lot of other states. Now, California, you might be paying 15%. But you know what? People are fleeing California in droves because they can go to neighboring states like Idaho and pay a whole lot less. So to your point, I think you're exactly right. Cut the income tax, we might actually see an increase in revenue.
Following on that deal, if I'm a company and I hope my company, let's just throw out that the company makes $1 million a year and I get paid as the chief executive officer 200,000 a year. Why would I locate in Alabama if you're going to tax my corporate profits, on those numbers, $50,000 more than Florida, and my personal taxes $10,000 more than Florida? Why wouldn't I mean, how much incentives do we have to offer that guy to get him to come to, Baldwin County instead of Escambia County, Florida? If, there's going to be, that doesn't sound like a lot, but over a decade, we're talking about over $1 million in extra taxes for being in Alabama.
It's especially a problem in border counties, as you mentioned. I mean, if people have the option of locating in Pensacola or in Orange Beach, I mean, that's not that far away. The topography is very similar. The roads are in good condition in both places. I mean, yeah, why wouldn't you go in the place with the lower tax structure? That makes perfect sense. It's funny. People always talk about with the lottery. They always talk about the money we're losing. Well, all the people in the border counties drive over the border and they buy lottery tickets in Tennessee or Georgia or whatever, and we're losing that revenue. No one ever talks about the revenue we're losing from businesses not locating here because we still charge a state income tax. And I'm glad you brought that up. You're exactly right. I guarantee we're losing businesses, but it's impossible to measure the number of jobs you're losing. What politicians can do is measure the number of jobs they, quote, bring in. So if an industry comes here with 100 jobs, they go out and brag they created 100 jobs. Well, as I mentioned previously, they didn't create them. The entrepreneur did. They just kind of helped facilitate them bringing here. But did they cost us 200 jobs on the back end by not fixing our regulatory structure and our tax structure? And we'll never know because the company that decides to go to Georgia over Alabama because we still charge tax, it's not like they send us an email and say, just so you know, the reason I decided that was because of your state income tax. We're never going to know those numbers. You can't measure what you missed. And that's what makes it so hard.
The Republicans took over in 2010 in both houses of Congress. And now we're seeing all kind of monies come into the treasuries. Brandon was going over some bills with me the other day, and I was laughing at some of the stuff they're spending time on. Why is it that with having conservative leadership and this kind of money, we're still ranked 50, 49th, 48th in just about everything?
Yeah, well, this is a great question. I mean, I think we are making improvements in some areas, and I'm thankful that in Alabama elections, at least, we aren't ranked 50th. At least we're ranked number 2. It's like other than Alabama football and Auburn basketball and elections, those are about the only 3 things I could think of where we're ranked, top 5. So Alabama has so much opportunity, though. We're in the South. We're a huge agricultural economy. We export a lot of timber. There's only a couple states like Washington has more timber than us. There are trees everywhere in Alabama. We have a huge forestry industry in Alabama. We have the Gulf Coast. I mean, if people understood that we have the same white sandy beaches that Florida does, they don't have to leave the state. I don't know if y'all spent much time in Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Fort Morgan. That is absolutely beautiful territory down there. We have rivers that flow all throughout Alabama. I mean, we're blessed with topography and infrastructure to really position us to do very, very well economically. And I think we will. I think you are seeing North Alabama having a boom. We landed Toyota Mazda 5 years ago in the Huntsville area. We've got the FBI bringing 5,000 jobs in. You've got Kash Patel coming and visiting, saying he's going to bring more jobs in. And I believe that Space Command, an announcement is imminent. The Space Command will be located in Huntsville. So I don't think we're going to stay at the bottom of the heap. I think we're on the rise. My goal is, as Secretary of State, would be to get us back to a #1 ranking on election integrity. And I don't just want to be #1. I want our score to improve too, right? I want to be a 99 or 100 on the scorecard. And speaking of scorecards, there's a lot of legislators, as Brandon mentioned, they campaign as a conservative and they get to Montgomery and they don't vote like one. That's what scorecards are for. Go check the American Conservative Union. Go check the Club for Growth scorecard. Check Eagle Forum scorecard. Alabama Policy Institute puts out a scorecard sometimes. And you'll see I was always ranked 1 or tied for #1 my last 3 years in the legislature. I had the best voting record. And if you vote against bills that infringe liberties and freedoms, the bills that raise taxes, bills that grow government, it's not that hard to get a good ranking, but it can be controversial to do. You have to vote against your colleagues' bills. That's never fun to do, but you have to vote based on the merits of the bill, not who the bill's sponsor is.
That's all I have, unless you've got something else, Christopher.
I want to ask you one more question because I was just thinking about this. I seen finally the president, he put a ban or no more backing LGBT month, and we've seen him ban transgender athletes. Is this now no longer about Democrat, Republican? Is this about good versus evil?
I think it's been about good versus evil for a long time. I think the Roe v. Wade ruling back in 1963 that allowed abortion to become legal in America. We've been in a spiritual battle in America for a long time. And I feel like the 2024 election, everybody says that it's the most important election. Every time you have a presidential election coming, this is the most important presidential election of our lifetime. But I really believe if that would have gone the right way, our country might have just been too far gone to ever recover and to ever save. I'm so thankful Donald Trump got back in there in a really convincing manner, won all 7 swing states. We won the majority of the popular vote in America for the first time in a long time. I think it's been since George Bush's reelection in 2004 that we won the majority. It's been 20 years. We got the majority of Americans agreeing with our platform. And it illustrates how far left the liberals have gone. You might have seen Elon Musk posted on Twitter a couple years ago, back when it was still called Twitter. And it was a graphic, and it was him, and there was a fulcrum of the right and the left, and he was slightly on the left. And then the fulcrum 2 years later had extended, and the Democrats' fulcrum was like off the charts on the left, and he's still in the same spot, but now he's on the right side of the fulcrum because the Democrats went so far left. And he said, this illustrates what's happened in our country. And he's exactly right. Look, 5-10 years ago, Elon Musk was not voting Republican, but he just said, y'all are just going crazy. You're wasting money. Even Democrats can agree Doge is a good idea. Some reasonable Democrats and independents agree saving money, not wasting money, is a good idea. There's never a justification for just blowing money. And Elon Musk saw that happening. You see Robert Kennedy saying Democrats are so unreasonable that Kamala Harris wouldn't even meet with RFK about improving the health of Americans. There are legitimate health problems in America, and we all know it. I don't have the answer to all these questions, but there's a lot of obesity in America. There's a lot of autism in America. America performed worse throughout COVID than third world countries did. We had much higher death rates. Why? These are questions we need answers to. The Democrats don't care about actually fixing problems. They care about culture wars and identity politics. And they've been successful with that, winning elections for the last 20 years. But the tide finally turned in 2024. So to answer your question, absolutely, we're in a spiritual battle. As Chairman John Wall always says here in Alabama, we're in a spiritual battle for the heart and soul of our country. And I really believe that. And I'm thankful that the Lord saw fit to preserve us for at least another 4 years with the re-election of Donald Trump.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrel, for your time today.
Enjoyed the discussion with both of y'all. Thank you so much.